So I've logged into Google Drive and going to go about creating a proper graph for physics. So I want to create a spreadsheet. So I click on plus new. I go down to Google Sheets. It creates a new one. Now I'm going to put in the data. So this is for you put in whatever you want. I'm going to put 2 lines on my graph. This is the bounce height versus drop height. So drop height is going to be my horizontal axis, bounce height, ball 1. Now the bounce height ball 1 and bounce height ball 2 are going to be part of the legend. They're not going to be part of the vertical axis, but we'll take care of that in a moment. Bounce height ball 2, units of centimeters. Then you would input the data. Now I just happen to have the data over here, so I'm just going to see if I can cut and paste it. And I could have done the titles too. All right, so I have my data. You would type in the data that you're particularly using. Some of this data, the first 3 rows come from a lab from 2017, and the next 2 are ones I just made up. So to insert a graph, I want to go to Insert, Chart. And I don't want a column chart. I want the scatter plot. So I come down here to Scatter and Data Range. I highlighted it. Now, if I'd highlighted it beforehand, it automatically would have populated. All right, so that's the basics of it, but we need to now make it look right. Use header 1, use row 1 as headers. So it's not going to try to plot that data. And I'm going to customize chart axes and titles. So if the chart title, it is bounce height versus drop height. I don't put the units in the title unless they are of some importance. Then I wanted the horizontal axis. That is my drop height. Space and then parentheses. And you can see that it shows up there. And now I want to go to the vertical axis. Bounce height, centimeters. It now shows up there. I double check spelling, make sure I've capitalized the important words there. And I have units in parentheses after a space. All right. I now want to add a trend line. So I go into my graph. So I'm going to customize series, trend line. It automatically puts linear right there. And I want to label using the equation and the r² value. And then I'm going to click on the other set of lines. I want to add the trend line. I'm still under customize and series. And linear defaults. I want to use the equation and the r² value. Now this is not perfect. Let me expand it a little bit there. This technically is not an equation. This is an expression. So I want the actual equation of the line. So I'm going to do y equals. Then I'm going to put a semicolon, space, space, because of the way that Google Docs formats it. And so now I've got my equation and the r² value. If you really want to get fancy, if this was a formal lab report, you would put units into it and you would change X and Y to something more appropriate, but this is fine for the normal labs. And then for the other one, I'm going to do something very similar. I'm going to do Y equals up front, then a semicolon, but space, space, just so that I have some space there so it doesn't look like it's all blurred together. Now, I have an r² value of 1. That is often suspicious there. And so, and it doesn't want to let me change anything. I want that bounce height, drop height in the middle where title should go. I'm just going to use the space bar. Center it. Title font. Oh, I personally like serif fonts. So let's go to serif and 20 for the axis, and then down here, it automatically flipped to horizontal. And let's go serif and 20. And then over here, serif and 30. That looks somewhat centered. And title color, there we go. And I can play around with this a little bit more. All right, so I have a legend. Now, if I'm going to print this out in black and white, I might have some issues because it depends upon what we're working with there. So let's again go to the trend line and make it a little bit more stark if we need to. And I've done the triangles in the circle so that it's a lot clearer of what we're looking at. So if it shows up in black and white, triangles, circles aren't going to, they're very distinct.